When the deputy handed me the restraining order, his eyes softened like he already knew it didn't make sense. But nothing prepared me for the first line. It claimed I had harassed my own daughter and threatened her husband's life. In that moment, something inside me went quiet. Too quiet. Not anger. Not fear. Just a cold, hollow disbelief settling right behind my ribs. I turned the papers over with a shaking hand, sitting alone in my kitchen as the last of my morning coffee went lukewarm. The house was still, so still I could hear the ticking of the old wall clock. I kept reading the words, hoping they'd rearrange themselves into something true. They didn't. I hadn't threatened anyone. I hadn't even argued with them. But the law doesn't ask if it feels right, it just acts. And as I looked through those pages, only one thought kept echoing in my head. Why would my own daughter think I'd ever hurt her? Before everything fell apart, my days followed a quiet rhythm. I'd wake before sunrise, the air still cool and damp, and step out onto the porch with my first cup of coffee. The boards creaked under my feet the same way they had for decades, like an old friend clearing its throat. My land, 7 acres of soft hills and tall pines, wasn't just property. It was memory. My father's hand on my shoulder when I first learned to plow. My late wife's laugh echoing across the yard during summer barbecues. Emily's small footsteps chasing fireflies when she was 8. Emily used to stop by every other Sunday. She'd knock twice, then let herself in, calling, "Dad, I brought lemon bars." Her voice always had that brightness I never got tired of hearing. Her husband, Mark, followed behind her, polite smile, stiff handshake. He looked at my land more than he looked at me. But for Emily's sake, I tried to ignore that. Back then, life still felt steady, predictable, safe. The first sign that something was wrong came quietly, almost politely. Emily stopped staying as long during her Sunday visits. She'd sit on the edge of the couch instead of sinking into it like she used to. Her eyes kept drifting to the door, like she needed permission to breathe. And Mark, he started showing up early, alone, pretending he just happened to be in the area. One afternoon, he walked the property with me, uninvited, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the tree line. He asked questions he'd never asked before. "Has this place ever been appraised? You planning to leave it all to Emily? You ever think about selling?" His tone was too casual, too practiced. But I told myself I was overthinking. Still, when Emily hugged me goodbye that day, her hands were trembling. And I don't think she realized it. That was the moment the air shifted, just a little. Enough for doubt to whisper, "Something's coming." The truth didn't explode into my life. It seeped in, slow, like water under a rotten door. It happened the night an officer knocked on my porch, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. "Sir, you've been accused of threatening your daughter and her husband. A restraining order's been filed." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was impossible. "I haven't threatened anyone," I said, my voice cracking. But the officer only slid the paper forward. Emily's signature was on it. Shaky. Not her handwriting. The next morning, I drove to their house. When she opened the door, her eyes were red, avoidant. "Emily," I whispered, "what is this?" Mark stepped behind her, hand on her shoulder like he owned her spine. "It's for everyone's safety, Frank." His voice was smooth, too smooth. I looked at my daughter. "Did I ever make you feel unsafe?" Her lip trembled. But she didn't speak. That silence, it broke something in me. Then Mark said the sentence that finally revealed his hand. "Look, your land is too much for you at your age. Maybe it's time you let us take over." There it was. The truth. The betrayal. The reason behind the lie with my daughter's forged name. I stared at him, feeling a coldness settle into my chest. "You did this," I murmured. He smiled, thin, victorious. "Prove it." I went home that night and sat on the edge of my porch, the rain still dripping from the eaves. My hands shook, not with fear, but with a quiet, calculated resolve. I wasn't going to fight with anger. That would play into their hands. No, I needed proof. Documents. Witnesses. Anything that could show the truth. I started with the land records. Mark had never been thorough. I contacted the neighbors, people who had known me all my life. Every friendly face, every gardener who had worked my fields, every delivery driver who had seen Mark lurking, each one became a small piece of evidence. I documented everything meticulously. Emails, voicemails, even a diary I had kept for Emily's visits over the years. Every line, every entry, a reminder that my intentions had always been clear. When I finally looked at the pile of evidence on my dining table, I felt a strange calm. I wasn't just defending myself, I was reclaiming the story of my life. And when the day came to see the new judge, I would step forward, confident, prepared, and unafraid. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and tension, the sunlight cutting through the blinds in narrow beams. I watched Mark's confident smile fade as I laid out the evidence. Emails, witness statements, property records, and even the handwriting analysis proving the restraining order was forged. Emily sat frozen, her hands clenched in her lap. The murmurs around the courtroom grew louder as the truth spread, neighbors, friends, even the local paper reporter present, nodding at the revelations. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp. "It appears there was a deliberate attempt to mislead this court," he said quietly, scanning Mark. Mark shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet anyone's gaze. No shouting, no humiliation. Just truth, undeniable, unfolding before everyone. For the first time, I felt the weight on my chest lift slightly. Justice wasn't loud, it was precise. Weeks later, the air on my farm smelled like fresh hay and rain, and the old rhythm of my days returned. Emily came by quietly one Sunday, her eyes clear but heavy with guilt. I didn't know," she whispered, placing a pie on the table. I nodded, letting the silence say what words couldn't. I forgave, not for them, but for myself. Holding on to anger would have poisoned the peace I had fought to reclaim. Mark never set foot on my property again. I rebuilt trust slowly with my daughter, teaching her that loyalty wasn't just about blood, but honesty. Sitting on the porch that evening, listening to the wind through the pines, I realized that strength wasn't proving I was right. It was standing tall while letting truth speak for itself. Some battles aren't about winning. They're about preserving integrity, and finally, I had done that. Sitting on my porch that evening, I felt the quiet weight of truth settling in. Would you have found the patience to fight for justice without anger? If my story moved you, consider subscribing for more real stories of resilience, family, and unexpected courage. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done?